It went from 10 days to 7 days. So today, if you test negative on day 6 and day 7, then your isolation period will end. So that's what we've done for now. And of course, we'll await, if JCVI want to give us further advice on that, then we'll await their advice.
I'm not a medical scientist, so I would always bow to their judgment in these situations. So let's wait and see what they have to say about it. I mean, as always with these things, there's different opinions. So us politicians should always be careful to listen to scientific experts.
So no government decision as yet, or even a sign they're about to change their policy. But to keep the economy moving, the NHS moving and schools moving, I think it is increasingly likely, Kimberly, there will be a change. And it would make sense to make that change pretty soon before schools and businesses return next week. Boris Johnson is due to make a visit to a vaccine centre later today. He will be interviewed during that visit, and I'm sure he'll be questioned about this topic.
Let's see what he says. Joe, thanks a lot. Well, let's take a look at the latest COVID-19 data now. And there have been 129,471 new cases of COVID-19 recorded in the UK in the latest 24-hour period. More than 117,000 of those were in England. That's the highest number of cases reported in England since the start of the pandemic. Those numbers, however, don't include data for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but there is data for Wales, which also includes figures for both Christmas Day and Boxing Day. Another 18 deaths have been reported within 28 days of a positive test, and that brings the total number of people who've died in the UK to 148,021. 16,357 people have received their first dose of a vaccine, and 18,965 have had their second, which means that in total nearly 47.3 million people have had both doses. Boosters, 215,703 new boosters or third jabs were reported in the latest 24-hour period. Nearly 32.7 million people have now had their third jab or booster. Well, meanwhile, in Europe, Omicron's surge across the continent is forcing countries into tighter restrictions. France reported Europe's highest ever number of new daily COVID cases, recording 179,807 cases on Tuesday. Earlier this week, French health authorities warned the country could see as many as 250,000 cases a day by the start of January. The Omicron variant has also led to record high cases in Italy, Greece and Portugal, while Poland has reported its highest daily number of deaths in the fourth wave of the pandemic. Now, the former Children's Commissioner for England says the social care system is not fit for purpose and frequently places young people in greater danger. Anne Longfield's Commission on Young Lives report suggests the system is guilty of handing some children over to criminal gangs. Together with the Oasis Charitable Trust, they're calling on the government to establish a ministerial task force aimed at financing new community homes for children. Sky's Gerard Tubb reports.
Yeah, I'm actually staying at my birth parents' house currently.
Rachel has been through the care system in England, which a new report says is unfit for purpose. She says she saw increasing numbers of older teenagers coming into care, not getting enough support and turning to crime.
I almost found myself almost joining them because it was like, well, if all the foster children are doing this, let's just be the stereotype. But obviously at that point I was trying to still go to university, so I prevented myself. But a lot of young people fall into that trap just because it is a stereotype and there's not that support, so what else can they actually do?
The care system in England is said to be facing an ongoing epidemic of drug running, grooming and serious youth violence. The claims are made in a charity-funded report that says in March this year there were 80,850 children in care in England, up 1% from last year. 23% of them were 16 and 17-year-olds with acute needs. In London alone, there were at least 1,932 children in care living in unregulated, semi-independent accommodation. The report highlights older teenagers being put in care to safeguard them from county lines and criminal exploitation, only to end up at risk of more serious harm. It says the care system is infuriatingly inadequate and was designed with younger children in mind.
We are seeing a children's social care system which is stretched to its limits and creaking. There is a children's social care review going on, an independent review, and we would like that review to put teenagers very high on its list of recommendations when it reports early in 2022. It's completely unsustainable, either on moral grounds or economic grounds, which is why it needs to be reset much more towards helping children before they get into crisis.
The report shows particular concern for racial bias that it says puts black boys at particular risk of harm. Black children are more likely to be in care, but the number who were adopted dropped by 50% between 2015 and 2019. The report calls for a new care system geared to help vulnerable teenagers. Rachel says she was one of the lucky ones and supports the report's conclusion that the current system is failing to give teenagers the help they need. Gerard Tubbs, Sky News, Oldham.
There's a warning today that millions of families are facing a cost of living catastrophe in 2022 due to soaring energy bills and rising taxes. Emma Birchley joins us now. She's in the newsroom. Morning, Emma. It's a report. What does it say?
It's a pretty grim warning, and it comes from the economics think tank, the Resolution Foundation, and they predict that 2022 will be the year of the squeeze, and I think certainly many families will already be feeling that. They even predict that inflation could go as high as 6% by the spring, the highest it's been since 1992. And the problem is this perfect storm of soaring energy prices and tax rises. And from April, looking at energy first off, the energy price cap is expected to rise, equating to approximately £500 for a typical family. Then with tax rises, the national insurance contributions will rise by 1.25%. Income tax thresholds are also frozen. So that'll all have an impact, and together it's expected to mean around £1,200 for the typical family. Now, the government says that they have taken decisive action to deal with the cost of living crisis that's worth £4.2 billion. So there's been help, they say, with the energy price cap, which is protecting people from the real surging prices on the wholesale market. Also, with the universal credit, they say they're increasing the point at which universal credit is reduced. But as far as the Resolution Foundation is concerned, the government, they think, is going to have to do more. And the absolute priority will be dealing with these soaring energy costs.
OK, Emma, thank you. Let's have a look at some of the other stories making the news this morning. And Hong Kong's pro-democracy news outlet, Stand News, says it's to close down after 6 members of staff were arrested in a police raid on its offices. Authorities accused the staff of conspiring to publish seditious content. It comes just months after the leading pro-democracy newspaper, Apple Daily, was raided. That also shut down soon after. Prince Andrew's lawyers have challenged his sexual abuse accuser's residency status in a bid to have her civil case against him thrown out of court. The Duke of York's legal team says Virginia Giuffre is not a US citizen as she lives in Australia, so the court in New York does not have jurisdiction over the case. Ms. Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for allegedly sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager, claims he strenuously denies. And the legendary American football coach and commentator John Madden has died at the age of 85. The NFL have said that he died unexpectedly, but haven't given a cause. Madden led the Oakland Raiders to their first Super Bowl in the 1976 season and then became a hugely popular TV analyst after retiring from coaching. NFL video games have borne his name since 1988. The government has announced that job centre staff will be offered specialist training to help more people with autism find work. A new autism framework has been designed alongside the National Autism Society, and it's set to be piloted in 15 sites across England, Scotland and Wales. And joining me now is Tom Nichols, the National Autism Society's Head of Policy. Thank you so much for talking to us this morning. What sort of training will they get?
Well, we know from talking to autistic people over many years, the understanding and the lack of understanding in job centres was proving to be just a massive fundamental barrier to people getting the support they needed to get into work. So working with those professionals, it's about making sure they have the most appropriate training to be able to do the most appropriate things. And that depends on what kind of member of staff at job centre you are. If you're working on the front desk, it's incredibly important that you can help an autistic person feel comfortable in that first entering into the building, waiting in the waiting room, perhaps finding a quieter space for that person if the loudness and the lights and everything would be overwhelming for an autistic person.
Because even that can be really, really difficult, can't it?
Absolutely. And, you know, it completely sets the tone for everything that goes after it. If you have a terrible experience as soon as you walk in through the door, an autistic person could become incredibly anxious, very overwhelmed by the situation. And actually, it means that they'd find it much, much harder to then deal with and get something productive out of the appointment they're actually there to attend. And that can lead to people finding it harder to get to work, having poorer decisions made about their support that they should be getting and what benefits they should be getting.
It's interesting that this is only coming about now.
Well, we at the National Autistic Society have been campaigning and calling for this for several years, but actually the most important thing is that it is happening. And we know that it's going to be crucial to tackling what we call the autism employment gap. Only around a quarter of autistic people are in work, but that's despite the fact that the vast majority of autistic people say that they desperately want to. And we know that the job centre's got a really crucial role to play in that pathway towards a job for autistic people. So this is a pilot, and it's really important that this pilot is successful and can then be rolled out across the UK so that any autistic job seeker can walk into any Job Centre Plus and know that they're going to get the understanding and the support that they need to find work.
What sort of time frame are you looking at for that to happen?
Well, it's not going to change overnight, and we know that with the autism employment gap being as big as it is, this is a project of years, not months. But working with the Job Centre to firstly refine and make sure that this framework is the most effective that it can be and that it does work for autistic people is going to be the most important thing. And then beyond that, we'd want to see it rolling out as quickly as possible across the country, across all job centres.
So what happens when people with autism do get the opportunity to get a job?
Well, just like for anyone, a job is an incredibly important part of day-to-day life. It means that you can afford the things you need to be able to afford. It means you can be more independent. It means you actually get loads of social opportunities as well, because you've got new colleagues, working in new places, trying new things. It also, for some autistic people, can mean that their particular skills and talents that they may have from having particular interests can be used in a really useful way. So we've seen some employers out there who are particularly keen actually to employ autistic people because looking at things a little bit differently can lead to new solutions. And so we see that particularly in IT and technological firms, but actually it's just as important across all industries and creative industries too. And we know that autistic people want to work in all of them.
Okay, Tim, well, we hope it is successful and is rolled out. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Quick look at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
We are in for an unsettled week with more wind and rain, but it's going to turn very mild. Northeastern Britain is frosty with some dense fog patches, while Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland and most of England are mild, wet and windy. Rain there will clear later this morning with sunny spells developing, while northeast England and much of Scotland will turn wet. Some heavy rain is likely over western hills, while strengthening winds in the south and west will bring gales to northwestern coasts. It's going to be mild generally, but chilly in the far north.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still to come, we have the sport with Eleanor. Eleanor, COVID problems, well, more COVID problems in the football world.
More COVID problems, you're right. There's been another Premier League game postponed because of coronavirus cases. While on the pitch, Liverpool suffer a shock defeat that could be costly in the title race. And we'll show the sensational finish that sent Rob Cross into the last 16 of the World Darts Championships.
I'm Stuart Ramsey and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
Well, there's a real sense now that people are beginning to expect that this whole airlift is coming to an end, and they're really, really desperate. We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people and putting them into trucks. You either live and recover, or you die.
Okay, so that's like a war.
That's the war, yes.
We help you understand the world with us. Over the past 24 hours, the soldiers have been attacked on a number of occasions.
It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed.
To take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. They were convinced the United States would become hooked. Well, they were right.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster that's just landed in between us.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world.
It's not out of control, but if we're drawn, it's so hot.
You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Lovely, Eleanor, still here. She's got all the sport. Eleanor, Liverpool feeling the pressure this morning.
Yeah, Klopp not very happy. He says if they play like that, they cannot even think about catching up with Manchester City.
Chase the pack, achieve your goals, and unlock rewards. Live life with Vitality and Zwift, the app that makes indoor cycling fun. This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality and Zwift.
2021 has been quite an extraordinary year for so many reasons for you and this England side. More wins, 15 of them, more goals, 52, more clean sheets, 14 of them in 2021 than any other England team has ever managed in history before. Those are extraordinary stats. How do you reflect on 2021?
Yeah, I think it has been a remarkable year, really. Of course, you've always got that, but as part of this year, there's always going to be that in our head at being in a final and not getting over the line. But if I look logically as a coach about the progress of the team, you know, the last two qualification campaigns we've been the top scorers in Europe. I think we've got the best defensive record in the world over the last 12 months or so as well. And we were behind across those 19 matches in this calendar year for, I think,